Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to Endgame. This is episode 5, and I just returned from, guess where? Iran. This is a special episode for you all, and I hope that you will enjoy it. I had the opportunity, rare opportunity. There's only been about 15 or so foreign journalists who've been allowed on the ground, and I have been one of them over the past 9 weeks or so, to be able to go into Iran and to travel around the country to see not only the devastation and destruction wrought by the Americans and the Israelis, but also the response by the Iranians, their own solidarity movements, their collective formations, their military, the people on the streets every night at the rallies. It's been absolutely amazing to see. So we'll have a lot of great footage. But another thing that I was able to do, a very rare opportunity, and we were the first, two of us were the first two journalists to give live reports from where? The Strait of Hormuz. I had the opportunity to travel to the Strait of Hormuz via Bandar Abbas. And we were able to go out on a boat. We were able to see all of the vessels out there on the Strait of Hormuz, able to go by the various islands in the Strait of Hormuz that are controlled by Iran, that are Iranian territory, as part of Iran's territorial waters. And what we saw were various ships back to back, sort of next to each other, in front of one another, side to side, but rows and rows of ships that were anchored. There were ships that were cargo ships, ships that carried petroleum. It was an unbelievable sight to see. And one of the things that we were able to recognize was that the ships' smokestacks were all billowing smoke, which meant that they were still crewed and people were living on the ships. They were awaiting orders from Iran's IRGC Navy or Sepah Navy, and they were waiting for either trying to run the blockade, which is imposed by the US in the Gulf of Oman, or waiting to pay the toll to the IRGC's Navy that is collected by the Iranian government, and then able to transit. So we saw a lot of ships out there. We saw very little movement and traffic, but we were told that there is traffic that is going from friendly countries and vessels that have paid the toll. But unfriendly countries, especially the belligerent and aggressive countries, which is the United States, Israel, and their various allies in the Gulf, they have not been allowed to transit through the Strait of Hormuz. So it was amazing to see. For those who are unfamiliar, the strait is absolutely beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of land on the earth and sea on the earth. But one thing that is clear for all of us who have been in the Strait of Hormuz now is that Iran firmly controls the strait. There is no possibility for the Americans or their allies to take control of the strait. Iran has nearly 2,000 kilometers of territorial sea border. So all of that territory means that the US would have to then combat the various defense that Iran has on the coast. And it's not possible, not to mention Iran's big naval ships have been sunk, most of them by the US Navy, but Iran has thousands of smaller vessels that can prepare for its defense of its coastal territorial waters and also of the Strait of Hormuz. So it's just not possible, it's not feasible for the United States to take control of the Strait of Hormuz. You all, I'm sure, will find out through the course of the recent news that there is ongoing negotiations between the United States and Iran vis-a-vis the mediators in Pakistan over the Strait of Hormuz and whether it will be open again, whether it will be closed. Iran's parliament just passed legislation that they've been preparing for some time, that all transactions are now no longer going to be done in dollars nor yuan, but actually in Iranian rials, which is a way to help to support the national currency and to help with the economic effects of the sanctions and the ongoing aggression by the United States and Israel. These are big transformations, especially for Iran and for the broader global south and sort of multipolar world that we so often speak about. So there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack here and there's a lot to talk about. I had an opportunity to travel over the course of nearly 2 weeks from the north, from the Armenian border. I entered Iran, went to Tabriz, which is in East Azerbaijan province, and went all the way down to Tehran, then to Esfahan, which is home to many of the most important cultural sites and heritage sites in Iran. especially from the past 5 to 6 centuries, and then further south to Bandar Abbas. And of course, lastly, we went to Minab, which is the school, which is the area where the school is, the primary school, which was hit not once but multiple times by US Tomahawk cruise missiles. And we had the loss of life of about 120 school students and dozens of other teachers, faculty, staff, and parents. So it was very heart-wrenching to see, but also to see the determination and patriotism of the people as they continue to struggle against this aggression and in defense of their homeland. One thing is very clear from my time in Iran, that the Iranian society, even those critical of the government, even those non-religious parts of the society, even the women who don't wear the veil or the chador, one thing was clear: all of them were out on the streets, all of them supporting the government, all of them supporting their homeland against the foreign aggressors. Today on the show, as our first guest, we're going to have Hamidreza Gholamzadeh, who is the Deputy for International Affairs and Public Relations for Tehran's municipality. I hope you all enjoy this interview that we conducted live in Tehran.
I want to ask you first and foremost, because our audience is very interested about this. What's the situation like on the ground? We're in a period of ceasefire. We had a very harsh few weeks of fighting, nearly 40 days or so of fighting, give or take. And already the estimates are over 10,000 different bombings that were done on Iran, not to mention all of the other crimes that were committed from day one, with the killing of all of the girls and boys in Iran, also the assassination of Sayyid Ali Khamenei and many of the other political and military leaders, all the way to the end. So we have this now period of lull, although it's not an end of the war, there's a naval blockade, which is an active war. What's the feeling on the ground in Tehran, which is the largest city in Iran?
Maybe it's difficult to believe, but even during the war, during the military actions that were happening, the life in Tehran was going on almost normally. I said almost because some of the people had left the town, left the city in order to protect their lives, and some jobs were not very active or people that go to their work. So somehow it was not very normal, but the routines were going on. Everything was in place. And we tried a lot to keep the city leaning on. And that gave the ground for the people to be very active in the city every single night from day one so far until now. Every single night, people go to the streets, to the main squares of the city, and they have the chantings, they have the gatherings, they have their mottos, they have their expression of their feelings. And the moral they have is to continue to fight and to stand against the enemies. And it's interesting that people are not in favor of agreements and negotiations with the United States. The reason, the experience that they want, because for the past 2 times that we were negotiating with the Americans, they used it as a cover to attack us. So that's why people are not liking the negotiations. We might not have an agreement. So that feeling comes to the streets, and every night they go there and they're asking for revenge. They're asking the officials and the military commanders to take revenge of those martyrdoms and those attacks that have happened. So people are very united, even more than 12 days more than we had last year. And they are very steadfast in their support for the country. And they are very ready to fight for the country. And that's the main feeling that you can see on the streets if you walk across the city. And it's not just Tehran, it's all across the country. Every single day you go, you have met some of them, you can see that unity among the people, that they are very strong in supporting, and they are very eager to fight against the enemies. And they believe that they are the winner, and they will be the winner of this war, whatever it takes, and however it goes on in the future.
Let me take you back a little bit, because we started this Ramadan war February 28th, and Before that, just 2 months before that, we had a period of disturbances within Iran. Now it started with protests and rallies that were accepted by the government, questions about the economy, concerns about inflation, all of these things, which even Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said were reasonable. Of course, he said we should look into these, President Pezeshkian, many others. Quickly, they devolved into violence. There were violent confrontations, instigators, provocations, you name it. In Tehran, what happened on the ground? What did you see? What were you witnessing? And what can be said about the lives that were lost? Of course, we know that a lot of Iranian opposition cite numbers that are extraordinary, that have no basis in reality. What is concrete on the ground? What did you experience in those critical days?
Yeah, we had 3 days of unrest. January, I think 8, 9, and 10. And but to find out what happened, you need to go a little back. The roots are not only in the 12-day war, but even before that. The Americans, Israelis, have taken a long time to stage a psychological warfare against the Iranian public by funding some TV channels, which are Persian speaking. And of course, on the social media, they have a lot of campaigns against the Iranians to spread misinformation and fake news among the Iranians to make a distrust to the government among the public. And the study shows that if you spread this information among the society, even if those disinformation are benign and it is proved to the public that it has been false, again, still, the public would not lose some part of its trust in the government. That's one part of the impact of this information. So with the spread of this information and fake news among the Iranians, they try to dissatisfy people with the government. And after a while, they decided to actually attack Iran in last June. They were thinking that if they attack Iran, the public would turn against the government and they would have the implosion of the public and everything would be finished very quickly. So they staged that war in the June and they felt to raise to have the people and the unrest because people got united. People got united against the outer enemy. They thought that maybe it was because of the enemies and because of the aggression was first. So they decided to change it the other way around and to have the unrest first and then complete it with the aggression and the military campaign from us. So we had those unrest that we said just a few days on the early days of January and late days of December. And it was very peaceful. People came to the streets. They actually announced their dissatisfaction with the bad economy, and that was great. No unrest, no violence. Everything was very peaceful. On January 8th, there was a call for public rallies, and it was mainly supported by the Pahlavi, which is outside the country, the son of the deposed Shah of Iran, and it was supported by the Americans and Israelis, and we knew it by the fact that they have actually claimed this support. There was a huge effort to bring people to the streets, and it happened on that Thursday. I can say the estimations are a few hundreds of thousands of people, so something between 300 to 500,000 people across the country, not only in Tehran, across the country, came to the streets. But majority of them were normal people, common people from different walks of life, who were protesting against the bad economy. These people were similar to those people who had protested in the earlier days. But when they came to the streets, they saw that there are some people who are turning the peaceful protest to violent ones, and they are rioters who are turning it to a riot. They are setting fire to the buses, to the fire trucks, to the buildings, to the banks, and they're damaging the public assets who belong to the people. It's not about political views, not about the government. It is damaging the public access of the people. And they are damaging the people who are claiming they want to support them. So very quickly, the public people try to distance themselves from those rioters and those violent people, who later was clear and it was admitted by President Trump that they were trained, funded, and armed by the Americans and Israelis. So he clearly mentioned that. They killed people, they destroyed things, they set fire to many things. They did not allow the firefighters to save people from the fire against the houses, and they did all the crimes. So many people who were on the streets on Thursday night decided to get back to home and distance themselves from these people. So on Friday and Saturday, the second and third day of the riots, you could see a few number of people on the streets. Majority of those people were peaceful protesters who went home. They did not want to commit crime. They did not want to attack the police departments. They didn't want to destroy things. So they distanced themselves. They went home. And a minority of those people remained on the streets on Friday and Saturday, and that was that. So on the Thursday, Iranian security forces did not have any permission to use live bullets, and was just paintball bullets in order to try to scatter the people. But on the second and third nights, they had the right to use bullets because people were not on the streets. There were only armed people and armed rioters and violent people. And that's where you see the highest number of the casualties are on the first night. On the first night, then security forces were not armed. You can see a lot of casualties. Unfortunately, many people were killed on the first night. And they were killed by, let's say, close shootings. And they were killed by things like knives or the sharp devices. And they were killed very brutally. And the angle of the film, and of the, for example, shooting, was in a way that it was clear that it was not like the security forces. When a person among the group of people is shot from behind, it shows that it has been someone within the group. Someone from among the group has killed them, not the security forces who were in front of them. So these are the facts that you can study and find out that the rioters deliberately wanted to have as high as possible of casualties, of killing of people. And that's the reason that they are providing very huge numbers. And they're changing on a daily basis, actually. That unfortunate happened on those 3 days. And after that, it was on Monday, January 12th, if I'm not wrong, the public came to the streets against the riots and in support of the Islamic Republic. Nearly millions of people came to the streets across the country. Almost 1 or 2 million people in the city of Tehran came to the streets. And they supported the Islamic Republic, and actually they were against the riots that happened on those 3 days. That was the old story that happened on the ground. And Iran very clearly, and based on documents, released the number of the names and number of people who were killed on those 3 days. And it was 3,000. So all the other figures are fake news. 20-some thousand, 12,000, 30,000, 45,000, 60,000, all of them are fabrications of the outsiders and enemies to increase the number of people. That was the pretext for them to attack Iran again. So for the third time, for the Ramadan time and the war, they realized that the first model failed, the second model failed. So they decided to have all together, to have the domestic unrest, to have the separatist groups attack the country, and to have the military campaign from by the American Israeli regimes against Iran, all at the same time. So they attacked Iran on February 28th, but the armed groups in Kurdistan region, they did not come forward because Iran controlled them, and of course the Kurdistan region controlled them as well. They had a very good cooperation with Iran. Iran, and it needs to be recognized. And that failed. The unity among the Iranians was magnificent, even better than the 12-day war. And the domestic unrest was also a failure. And there remained only the military campaign, and of course that was a failure as well. So they did not achieve any of the objectives that they announced, and they actually changed the goalpost to find some achievements, but they failed to do that either.
That was our conversation with Hamidreza Gholamzadeh, the Deputy for International Affairs and Public Relations at Tehran's Municipality. Now I have the distinct honor and pleasure of welcoming to the program for a special short interview, but a very important comment regarding Russia and Iran relations, Ebrahim Azizi, who is the head of Iran's parliamentary or Majles National Security Committee. He's very well known, very well regarded, a very distinguished politician in Iran, and he provided us a comment about the state of Russian-Iranian relations. What is the relationship of Iran with Russia? Where is it now, and where do you see it in the future?
ایشون میگن که من یک ایرانی هستم که تو روسیه زندگی میکنم. ازتون سوال میپرسن که رابطه ایران و روسیه چطور بوده، چطور میبینید و در آینده چطور خواهد شد که تو رسانه‌های روز
ایران و روسیه روابط بسیار خوبی رو دارن.
Iran and Russia have very good relations.
ما معاهده همکاری‌های دو جانبه داریم.
We have many mutual moves and cooperations.
این معاهده بین ما و کشور روسیه امضا شده.
And these things have been signed.
بالغ بر 47 ماده داره.
And it has over 47 articles and 47
و در
parts.
حوزه‌های مختلف فرهنگی، اجتماعی، سیاسی، اقتصادی، حتی دفاعی و امنیتی ما معاهده همکاری داریم.
Also, we are having cooperations in different fields such as social, cultural, defense, security.
ایران و روسیه شرکای راهبردی هستند.
Iran and Russia are very strategic partners.
و آخرین سفر بنده هم به مسکو بود قبل از جنگ.
And my last trip was to Moscow before war.
دیدارهایی رو با مسئولین روسیه داشتیم.
And I had some meetings with Russian officials.
توافقهای بسیار خوبی داشتیم.
We had very good cooperations.
و روز به روز هم سطح همکاری های ما و روسیه افزایش پیدا
Every day
می‌کنه.
the cooperation between Iran and Russia is getting more and more.
در این جنگ هم روابط ما بسیار خوب بود و آنچه که براشون مقدور بود رو کمک کردن.
And also in this war we had a good cooperation and they helped as much as they could.
البته سطح همکاری ها میتونه ارتقا پیدا کنه.
Of course the level of cooperation can increase.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
خیلی متشکرم.
خواهش میکنم.
That was Ebrahim Azizi, the head of the National Security Committee for Iran's Majles or Parliament. Now I have the distinct honor to welcome as our final guest tonight, someone that is a dear friend of mine and also someone that some of you might know from other media, Dr. Setareh Sadeqi, who is assistant professor in the Faculty of World Studies at the University of Tehran, the same faculty as our dear friend, Professor Said Mohammad Marandi. She's a specialist on U.S.-Iranian relations and on media perceptions of Iran in the West, as well as on the effects of sanctions on Iran. I hope you enjoy this interview, which was conducted live in Esfahan. We are live now here in Esfahan in Iran, which is also a first for the show and a first for me, as many of you know. So I want to welcome you to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's great to finally meet you in person in my hometown, and it's good to talk to you.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. And thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, sure.
I want to ask you, first of all, how are you feeling?
I mean, I think it's a difficult question because it's a combination of many different feelings. I think over the past 2 months we have experienced very deep sorrow and grief, but also feeling very proud of our country, very patriotic, and wanting to be part of what helps Iran as this strong country that is emerging as a major power, wanting to be a part of it, contribute to that, and at the same time wanting to make sure that your loved ones are safe and are not impacted by this massive airstrikes and illegal war that was launched on Iran. So it's a combination of very human feelings, you know.
What's the mood like in the country now, and especially in Esfahan, where you are and where we are now?
I mean, if you, especially over the past few days, I would say, but even during the war, if you walk down the streets, you don't feel like this country is going through a war. And I think that's amazing how people have their own human but also simple ways of resisting the imperialist aggression by just maintaining the life that they had. They did not allow their airstrikes or the bombings to stop them from living the life that they wanted to have. I mean, of course, it limited us in many different ways. For example, schools were moved online, or you don't really see or during Nowruz, which was our vacations, you don't really see as big of the vacation vibes in Isfahan as we used to be, because Isfahan was basically the second city that was targeted the most during these airstrikes, and a lot of people and a lot of civilians have been martyred. But when you walk down those streets, shops are active, people are shopping, they're doing their everyday life. And at the same time, for almost 2 months, we have been seeing thousands of people taking to the streets and massive rallies in support of the country. I've been to these rallies, and sometimes, while people are chanting, you see the missiles in the sky, or you see the air system activated, sometimes fighter jets flying over people, and they're not disturbed at all. They continue chanting, God is greater, and showing support for their country. They're very patriotic songs, and a manifestation of unity and coming together to protect the country, being part of the resistance. So it's not only about the missiles that hit their targets, it's also about us wanting to support our country in this fight against evil, against an Epstein coalition of Satanism, I would say.
For sure. One thing that's very unique about Esfahan, and one thing that we've also focused on, is the religious diversity, which is oftentimes flattened in the West and not really understood or misrepresented, that somehow Iran is not this mosaic of peoples and religions and languages, but is in fact just one brutal, tyrannical regime, and everyone conforms, and if you are not part of it, you have to go. But Esfahan, for example, where we are now, in your hometown, your home city, has a historic Armenian Christian community that dates back over a millennia. And I'm curious if you can speak about that, if you can speak about the minorities and the religious groups that live here in Esfahan, if you grew up with any of the people, if you know any of the people in these communities, and how it has been as part of the Iranian nation.
Yes, I mean, Esfahan is home to a Christian, Armenian population, as well as a Jewish population. The city has active synagogues, churches, a big cathedral, but also a fire temple for the Zoroastrians, and these different religious communities have lived together for hundreds of years. I mean, the Jewish community dates back to more than 2,000 years ago. The Christian community a few hundred years ago, and there has never in history been conflicts among these communities. I mean, and Isfahan is known as a conservative city, like majority Shia population. It's the capital of the Safavid dynasty, which was considered a Shia, ruling dynasty, and yet you see this coexistence and this. It's like the combination of the traditions into each other. Sometimes it's difficult to tell apart what is like Christian, what is Jewish, what is Muslim. It's like everything is just Esfahani, and we don't really categorize ourselves into this different sects. And at the same time, for example, I used to work in the Christian neighborhood, in the Armenian neighborhood, and while I was teaching, I would hear the church bells in a few minutes, or maybe like in a span of like half an hour or so, you would hear the adhan, and the two things would go together. Christians would participate in, for example, Muharram rituals, the Shia rituals, and Iranians would, the Muslims would contribute to the Christians, like respect them and sometimes even take part in it. For example, when it's around Christmas time, the neighborhood is decorated and you see Muslims and Christians and Jews walking together. They want to participate in the celebrations because, as you know, Muslims also celebrate Jesus Christ, which is another fact that is often missed in all the narratives that is, coming from Iran. So even though these communities, they have their own, for example, schools and community centers, etc., they are very much integrated into the fabric of Isfahan as a society, as a community. And you can just walk in downtown and walk into a Jewish store and not realize it until you see the Jewish symbols in the shop. The same with Christians, like the Christian neighborhood has famous cafes, for example, and you wouldn't really realize that you're walking into a Christian neighborhood until someone speaks Armenian or you see the crosses everywhere. So, and we have coexisted together for a very long time without a problem. And we actually take pride in being a symbol of this coexistence.
It really is amazing, and it's something that we rarely hear about. Sadly, because it's such a beautiful history. It's a history that dates back, as you said, especially for the Jewish community, 2,700 years.
Yes.
We're talking at the time of the Persian Empire.
Exactly.
Cyrus the Great, salvation for the Jewish people, which came at that time. So it's something that I wish was more understood, because I think people would have a very different conception and idea of what Iran is and Iran's history. One of the other things that we were speaking about earlier today, which I think is important, you are an Iranian woman, you're a professor, so one of the things that is often said is Iranian women don't have any education, Iranian women are oppressed, Iranian women are, it's like they try to flatten all of the region into one, that somehow we are, Iranian women are no different than women under Deobandism or under Wahhabi or Salafi regimes, or that somehow, everybody here is in a burqa. Yeah. Which, of course, not the case. And so I want you to kind of explain what are the differences. Each region has its unique histories, its unique cultures, and that's one thing that people also don't understand, is that, for example, the niqab is from a certain area, the chador is from a certain area, hijab is generally...
There's like a diversity of practicing this cultural part of the cultural identity. But, I would go like one step back. What is the problem with people choosing to wear the niqab? Like, you probably have observed that in Iran, it's very rare to see women covering the face. That's like traditionally has not been part of our culture.
Correct.
Just in the South, and like very, in a very unique way, which was actually to, like, it was a part of the caste system, but also to distinguish married and like single women. Some even say that was a way of protecting against the sun, because the sun can be very brutal in the South. But I would say, like, personally, my problem is that what's the problem with women choosing to like practice their religious, beliefs in a way that is different from the West? Why do you think, freedom for women should be defined in a very, strict framework that the West puts out? We are like practicing what we believe in. Where like no man has told me that I have to wear this. This is my choice, and this is often totally eradicated from, like, totally eliminated from the narrative. Nobody talks about how there are women who are like very vocal, very active in the society, sometimes even bussy, but practice. They wear the chador, they wear the hijab, and this dichotomy of oppressed women versus like free women, and then religious versus non-religious, or hijabi versus non-hijabi women, it's reducing a massive or a vast diversity of different cultural practices into a dichotomy that is just, at best, it's reflective of just a small portion of the society. And I'm seeing, like, especially even within, let's say, the West or global South, there's still a lot of misunderstanding about Iranian women. So they understand imperialism, they understand U.S. aggression against the country, but cultural imperialism is still not, they don't identify that. They don't understand that, for example, the way they have portrayed Iranian women is very different. And I've had friends from, across the world who say, but, you should allow women to do this, or you should allow women to do that. I mean, like, every society probably has problems. Like, for example, in Latin America, you have heard about femicide being an issue. In Europe, there are other issues. So women across the world have their struggles. So do women in Iran, and they are trying very hard to organize, to have. There are a lot of NGOs in Iran that are trying to, like, educate women. Or, for example, you see these memes on the internet. Women in bikini before 1979 and women in chador after 1979, and that's like, it's just reflective of how oppressed the Iranian women are. But they don't talk about how, for example, general public's literacy, but especially women's literacy before the revolution, was way lower than actually than a lot of other countries in the region. So even within the region, Iran was doing worse than some Persian Gulf countries or other areas. Or they don't talk about how, for example, during the first Pahlavi, in order to modernize the country, the first Pahlavi dictator started by imposing a dress code which was similar to the European dress code. So a Eurocentric definition of modernization and development was imposed on the country. And because Iranian women were Muslim and they did not want to give up on their cultural practices, they decided to stay at home, and they could not go to school, they could not be part of the society. Some even immigrated to Persian Gulf countries because they wanted to continue practicing, wearing the chador and wearing the hijab. And it became a symbol of resisting imperialism and resisting colonization to wear the hijab. And it's still, that's the reason why it has become an integral part, but also a very important part of the discourse, the revolutionary discourse inside Iran. And for the same reason, there was a lot of, I would say, like, there were people who were very sensitive to that because they perceived it as an attack on their culture, to basically, like, wanting to look like the West and just equating not wearing the hijab as being modern, when in fact you would see women who are very, very active, very educated, in very high positions in the government, or being doctors, etc., or also being very vocal in their house, standing up for their rights. And being very conservative in practicing Islam because that's their choice. And the way they have put it is that, no, women don't have the choice. Like, it's like somebody has forced them, and it's not their choice. And sometimes I think the definition that the West has given to freedom of women is in many ways and in many cases, it equals or it seeks to promote the capitalist culture, the consumerism that finds its market among women. So you think that it's difficult for me to cover my head. And of course, it's not something easy, but it's something that I really take pride in and I want to practice. But then for me also, it's a question how in the West women have sort of the society pushes them to have a certain type of body or skin or wear high heels all day because that's the dress code, and then men are always the same suits if they're going to a wedding, if they're going to a very important diplomatic mission, whatever. That's the most sort of comfortable shoes that they're wearing, suit that they're wearing, and nobody talks about discrimination there. Nobody talks about how that also puts a lot of pressure on them, and it actually comes from men. I mean, the men are the ones who are deciding that women should buy these things and become, the consumers of that market. So I think it's this Orientalist depiction of Iranian women, but also the Orientalist definition of freedom for women has been very problematic. And this is probably for the first time that the world is seeing Iranian women in a more visible way on the streets as athletes. I mean, you probably have seen these videos on social media that people are saying, I didn't even know that girls can go to school, or there are female athletes in Iran, and that's the first time that people are starting to search about what are the realities of Iran, like what are other things that we have been lied to about Iran, and I think that is changing the dynamics there.
Not only do women go to school, women have some of now the highest literacy rates. Women have held positions of political power in Iran,
Yes.
as well as business, entrepreneurs, academia, like yourself, all across the board that we don't see in most of the other countries in the region, if at all. We don't see that.
Not only in the region, in many parts of the world.
In many parts of the world.
I mean, education, like women's education in Iran, it's something, especially women in STEM, for example, is the numbers are much higher than a lot of the so-called developed, Western worlds, and people are not really talking about that. So, something more than 60% of university students, for example, are women.
They're women.
And women are active in many different fields, and these are all totally eliminated from the narrative.
You are a professor. I myself come from a teaching background. How do your young female students feel about what's going on? Feel generally, what is the mood as a teacher? You've been interacting with them for years as well, over the course of your courses. How do they feel in your classes? And how do they feel generally? Are they able to discuss many of these complicated issues with you? And how do you go about that?
Absolutely. I mean, the discussions around, for example, women's rights or even the issue of hijab and everything has been a part of the public discussion. So even like, for example, on state TV, you can hear debates about that. And it's the same in social gatherings, but also at universities. And it depends on the course and how, the discussions leads to that. But it's something that we discuss in our classes. I remember I had this class, research class, and I had a student who had an experience of living in Latin America, and she was telling the class, and we had this discussion that they see us. I mean, not just Latin America, because in Latin America also they get their image of Iran from Hollywood, right?
Yeah, of course.
So a lot of countries we do not really have direct interaction, but you see that they're talking about how women are oppressed in Iran, but then you see the issues that exist in all those countries, and we feel that Iranian women are definitely a lot freer and more. More vocal about their rights they push for their rights in the society. They don't like sit back and let others decide for them. They want to be very active, and we have these discussions. And of course, we're a nation of plus 90 million people. We're not monolithic like any other society, and there are always opponents and proponents, and sometimes the discussions are really heated, and we try to talk about it from different angles, and not only the female students but also male students, and over many different issues. Because of the nature of the major that I'm in and I'm active in, it's mostly about political issues. But for example, when it comes to post-colonial theories, we also talk about women's right, and how, or like the issue of the veil, or how all those cultural differences are reflected on Western mainstream media, and we get a lot of different responses.
For sure. Another thing that related to your work in post-colonial theory, for me that is of great interest and importance in my thinking. I'm ethnically Kurdish in lore, and most people don't understand that Iran is not a monolithic nation in terms of our ethnic groups, that there are many groups, Baluchis, Arabs, Turkomans, Aziris, Persians, of course, and many, many others. So I want to ask you, some consider Iran to be a remnant of an imperial state that therefore should further Balkanize, much like they say about Russia or China or many others. They don't say it about the US, for example, because no, that's okay. We're not going to divide it into 3,000 plus, indigenous nations. But I want to ask you, Iran does not have the same ethnic tensions that other countries have, because I think Iran's state development has been somewhat unique in its history. How do you feel about some of these ongoing questions about the minority groups that are here, their relationships? Do you have friends from different ethnic groups? And how do you feel about some of that push coming from the West, especially, that the Iranian nation is too big and needs to be broken up and divided, and everybody needs their freedom? Of course, no freedom for those back in those countries, but freedom for all these groups here.
I think in general, the Iranian nation, the general population, totally understands that a balkanization of the country just means perpetual chaos on borders, and ripping us of the natural resources that, for example, we have in the Persian Gulf, the oil that we have. Imagine if they separate Khuzestan and make another Persian Gulf, monarchy, and then the rest of the country doesn't have any, access to that oil. What is the country going to run on? But apart from that, even historically, all these ethnicities have been proud of being Iranian. You asked me if I have friends from different ethnicities. I do, and when I was in high school, I had Lor and Azeri, Turk friends. Right now at work, in the same floor, I have a colleague from Sistan Baluchistan, a colleague from he's Kurd, from a different region, and we're just from many different parts of the world, and many parts of Iran. And as I said, all of us take pride about how Iranian we are. For example, Kurds or Baluch say we're the most Iranian, or we have been in Iran, we have been part of Iran, from ancient years, and we have been the first to be, part of accepting the Iranian nationality. And even though there has been pressure from outside and conspiracy and all these imperial plots to sow discord in the country and set us against each other, it has not really been very successful. You sometimes hear, for example, about riots or protests in different parts where there is a minority group, but it's usually not about them being marginalized. It's usually something that they share with the rest of the country. For example, if there are economic protests, it's everywhere. It is true that sometimes some of the minorities are affected by, economic pressures differently. For example, Kurdistan is known to have a higher inflation than the rest of the country. But this is not fixed. It changes over time. Sometimes it's Kurdistan, sometimes it's another city or another ethnicity. So people do not feel it's a pressure on them. I think there is still room for improvement, for more inclusion of all these ethnicities in, for example, the decision making. And there have been great steps taken. We have had Kurdish and Baluch, for example, governors, and the decision making apparatus. But because Iran also, the political system also has many different bodies that are, that we have the city councils, we have the parliament, we have the assembly of experts, and all of these bodies elect their members from their local places. So in a way, the system has considered inclusion of all those minorities in the system, and that's what's happening. And that is why you see they are always part of, supporting the country. Like all of them have heroes that have been part of, these patriotic epic stories that we tell our next generations about how we managed to protect our borders. And we, of course, have their stories. Lors have their own stories. Baluch have their own stories. And you cannot really separate all these ethnicities from Iranian identity. They are integral to the Iranian identity. It's just not, I think it's just not possible to separate them.
How do you think of this war that's been imposed on Iran with social media and how it's been playing out? And what do you think the future role of social media is?
Well, I think the most important thing that is very different from the previous wars or eras is that we're now seeing the Generation Z of Iran and the new generation taking over AI and social media, like all these Lego movies, and the missiles that Iran launched opened the way for Iranian younger generation, and it's facilitated their presence on social media. It's still all this algorithm manipulation and everything, and how they have been eliminating Iranian accounts. It's playing a role, but I'm seeing a generation that is taken over, that is trying to take over the narrative very effectively.
Well, certainly it has been something really amazing. I think we're in for a wild ride with this young generation that are really making shockwaves all over the world, and even, I think, giving nightmares to the American president. Absolutely. And to Netanyahu, and I hope they continue to do that. Setareh, Sadeqi, I really want to thank you so much for coming onto the program. Look forward to our continuing friendship, our continuing work together for Iran, and to our victory against all of these enemies of our country.
Hopefully. Thank you so much for having me, and it was a great conversation.
That was Dr. Setareh Sadeqi, the assistant professor at the University of Tehran's Faculty of World Studies. I hope you enjoyed that interview in her home city of Esfahan. Now, that concludes everything for our fifth episode here at Endgame. Please stay tuned. We're going to talk more about Iran, I'm sure, in the coming weeks as the news and the events continue to develop on the ground. And I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And thank you again for joining us here at Endgame. I'm Christopher Halali. Take care.